Hey guys, so one of the questions that I get asked most frequently, both here on the YouTube channel, via DM on Instagram, in the comment section, is Kim, what are some of your favorite entrepreneurship and marketing books? Can you recommend a few? So I thought it would be really fun to bring on my husband, Chris, here on the show to share what are some of our current must-have entrepreneurship and marketing books that we just can't put down this year. So I'm really excited to be sharing that with you today. By the way, if Einstein, the cat, jumps up behind us, don't get scared. He's just hanging out in the patio right now because he just cannot be in the room by himself. So it's just gonna be a distraction and it's fine. So anyway, would you like to get started, kick things off?
Yeah, sure. So this was a bit difficult to narrow it down to just 3.
I know.
Because I've read quite a bit of books. I'm going to pick just books from this year specifically. Okay. Doesn't mean they were released this year, just means that I read them this year. Okay. So I'm doing them in order of impact. So if that gives you any kind of idea of what I think you should read, maybe you're like, man, I don't have time to read all 3, but I'll pick one. So if it were just one, I would recommend this book, Essentialism. Again, it's not a new book. It's been out for a couple years now. But this book, I would say, in terms of how it's impacted my life and also the lives of people I've recommended to, has been probably top 5 to top 10 read of my life for a variety of reasons, specifically if you're a high-performing type individual. Because we have this tendency to overcommit, to feel this sense of obligatory sensation of needing to say yes where the default should be no. So this kind of teaches you that, on the contrary, a lot of the high-performing people in the world, they're not saying yes to everything, when in fact they're actually scaling it back and doing very, very little, just being very specific about what it is they do. So they're very protective of their time, very protective of themselves, their asset, themselves being the asset, what they put in their body. So it's breaking it down to the most essential form of what you need to be doing to move forward. And that might sound a bit counterintuitive, but essentially, no pun intended, what you're effectively doing is focusing in on your genius, right? Focusing in on where you're going to make contribution to the world and your business and your life, so on and so forth, and not getting distracted by all the noise. And I think in 2018, that has never been more important than it is right now, because there's so many things that we can distract ourselves with, and this book is really going to help give you permission. It gave me permission to be like, okay, this makes sense. And what they're finding is that these other people in the world are applying this and having tremendous results and success with that. So that'd be my number 1, Essentialism.
Chris, and on that note about the book Essentialism, I feel like this is one of the books that you recommended to my dad. He's an executive, and it really helped change the way that he's approaching his productivity and all the incredible amount of commitments that he has. And
even a major life decision that he had to
100%.
make. Really was helpful in that process.
Yeah. So I have to read that one next. I still haven't, but I'm really excited to dig in, because I feel like if you are an entrepreneur, if you are, a professional, and maybe you're a mom, maybe you have a full-time job and you're working on your business on the side, or perhaps you just have a crazy amount of commitments as a high-level executive, this book is really going to help you not feel like you're being pulled in a million different directions.
Well, it's funny because on that point, I know when you get to yours, but on that point, I meet a lot of people. So I do a lot of coaching and with high performers, entrepreneurs, executives, stuff like that. And one of the things that I find the most is that there's almost this badge of honor associated with their calendar being full. And it's like, look how busy I am. But in the reality situation is what you're going to find in this book is that is not, and you've maybe heard this before, but usually less is always more. So I talked about on Instagram yesterday how less is usually often always more. Unless you're living on mom's couch in the basement, then more work probably makes sense. But that also probably means less Xbox, less TV, less drinking alcohol, less hanging out with your friends. So more work, but less of a lot of other things that you're not able to fill with work because you're distracted with things. So it's kind of in the same vein of that, but a really good example to bring up your dad, because I think that was a phenomenal case study outside of my own experience, for sure.
Totally. So I feel like, kind of switching into this next book, this is Your Best Year Ever by Michael Hyatt. And I purchased this book a while ago. I just never made the time to read it. It's one of the reasons why I brought you on the episode today, because Chris has really inspired me this year to get back into reading, which is one of my loves. I love reading. It's such a really, I don't know, I feel like not only do I learn a ton, but it's kind of like my own little guilty pleasure, whether it's about, self-help or entrepreneurship or business, or just some reads that I like to enjoy on my leisure time. Reading is so essential to growing as a person and really just being able to tap into creativity, opening up your mind to a different world. And it's something that I used to do ever since I was really little. We were joking about this, but when I was in elementary school and up to middle school, we would enter, my friends and I were total nerds, and we would enter into these contests from the library where if we read 100 books in a semester, we would get like this cool prize at the end of the semester. And we'd do it every year, and it was crazy. But anyway, we get so busy as entrepreneurs that I don't feel like we're making the time to actually feed our minds and open up our worlds to new ideas, which can lead to massive growth in our businesses. Yeah. And that's what this book did for me.
Well, and to that point though, so to be clear, quick pause on that. Kim is a voracious learner.
Yes.
There's never a time in her day when she's not consuming content from a YouTube video or from a podcast while she's working. Like, it's like through osmosis just enters into her brain. Like, it's literally a superpower. I don't have that luxury, so I have to have like just unadulterated, like structured time where I sit down and actually read. That said, also, if you are one of those types, I want to take a moment to kind of highlight that. If you are one of those types that you are listening to podcasts, which I host a podcast, so I obviously believe in podcasts.
We both do.
But one of the things that I find challenging with a blog or with a podcast or whatever is that while I'm learning, it's not the full thought from multiple different angles, the examples and all of the various perspectives that kind of coincide with what it is that I'm going to really utilize and apply to my life, right? It's like, because otherwise a podcast would be 10 hours long, right? And so I do think that it's great for hey, this is an idea of what you should maybe pursue. Let's go find a book on that. So this is like the beginning, maybe an introduction to your learning, or maybe, I present something in my example, right? And so that benefits you on the podcast or whatever. But I do think that there's room and it's necessary to have all of those various learning channels. And so I'm glad you've reincorporated that into your day, because I feel like, that's I can tell it's made a big difference with you.
It's made a huge difference. And I feel like a book, like you said, is a deep dive of one idea. And you can get a ton of kind of previews to that idea via podcasts, via blogs, even some courses. When you're deep diving into a subject, there's nothing like reading a book. And we'll get into that, like some of our tips about like how you can incorporate reading into your daily rituals, which I've done this year, and it's been transformative. But this book has helped me get to that point, because I don't know about you, but I've always set goals. I definitely reached a lot of them, but have never been strategic about setting up my full year for success. And this was the first year I did that. So this, in combination with my full focus planner, which I'm going to talk about in a future episode, I absolutely love it. It was transformative. This book really helped me figure out, okay, these are the goals that I want to accomplish this year, and this is how I'm going to break it down into daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly milestones so that I can reach those goals. And I have to say, I've had the most successful year of my entire career, and I've worked less than I ever have. So if you've been following here on the channel, you know that I've burnt out. We talked about, our crazy story of everything that happened with your health over the past 3 years over on Chris's podcast, which we'll link to all of that below if you want to get like the behind the scenes. So this has been a recovery year for me, and this book has really made a huge difference. So highly recommend you pick this up, especially now as we're closing the year and heading into 2019. Yeah,
this is a must for sure.
Must read.
For sure.
Next.
All right, so next, kind of in the same vein as Essentialism, but not really. It's more specific towards people that, let's say you're watching right now and you have somebody in mind, right? So the guy that works on Wall Street and he's just crushing it every day. Or you think of a Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs, like these guys that are really, really at the highest level of performance. And what Brendan Burchard and his team have done in High Performance Habits is they've done thousands upon thousands of hours into actually what it is that makes these people do the things that they do. And what they found was that there's 6 core habits that anyone can implement. So it's not just that they're inherently born, right? The Steve Jobs, the Jeff Bezos, the guys on Wall Street. They're not just inherently born with this ability to be high performers. There's actually, what they found is that there are 6 core habits that they implement that anyone can do, yourself included, to achieve what they'll talk about as a high performer. So this is a thick read. There's a lot of whale blubber in this one. It's a little bit more intense. But if you really are the type that you want to increase your productivity, that you want to be, you know, for me, something that's really important is to not look back at my life and be like, man, I left meat on the bone. I want to really get everything I can out of this life in all facets of my life, right? So not just professional growth, but personal growth, health, spiritual health, like all around, just live my life to the fullest. This book is really going to give you a framework on how to do just that.
I love that. And I have to say, I haven't finished the book completely, but I'm loving it so far. It's amazing. And it's definitely a more of a difficult read, but if you stay committed to it and you actually have, like, let's say a group of friends, or if you can get into a book club, this book is really fun to discuss because it's so deep and so meaty and so powerful. I love it. I think it's definitely a must. Okay, so my next one is Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk. This should not come as a surprise. I talk about this book a lot, and I feel like this is the perfect book for newbie entrepreneurs or for people who are kind of dabbling into, you know, the be your own boss space. It's the perfect introduction to how you can actually cash in on your passion. And this was the book that originally really inspired me to look beyond what I was currently doing in my job in corporate America and reach into kind of like a new dimension of who I was. And it was really scary at the time to think about starting a business and being my own boss and having all of that responsibility. And Gary really breaks it down into a very doable kind of action plan that you can set up for your own life and your own future business around just your passion, right? Do what you love in life and look at the long game, which is, you know, his philosophy on basically everything when it comes to business and marketing. But I love this book. I think that it kind of comes back to fundamentals and really brings people back to the core in a world where everyone wants instant gratification and we're living in this Instagram frenzied, picture perfect, fabulous life that's constantly curated and totally fake. He really talks about the reality of being an entrepreneur and setting up those expectations way before you even decide to take that leap of faith, hustling on the side while you have your full-time job, and really diving into content. So this, I feel like, is an oldie but a goodie. He came out with a new version called Crushing It. I haven't read that one, but
yeah, I mean, that's fresh off the shelves in the past year.
Totally. The original one really changed my business, so I love this one for sure.
Cool. So I did pull one oldie out myself. This is a book that I had kind of like skimmed around with, but we'll get more into that in a second about, you know, when I started to reinvest myself in reading. But this is fantastic, right? So I've built a multiple seven-figure company. I've helped people do the same thing. And this is probably 95, people ask me all the time, they'll say like, well, what did you do and how did you do it? If you want to learn that, like how we built, and this was bootstrapped from my college apartment. We grew to a multiple seven-figure company. You know, didn't have a clue, had no business experience whatsoever in terms of entrepreneurship. But I would say 95+% is what they teach in this book. And I just kind of got lucky. Maybe we have the same kind of philosophy or whatever. But as I read this book, I was like, holy wow, it makes sense to me why it worked the way that it did.
Yeah.
So this was really validating for me. To go back and read this book, but it also let me know that what we did wasn't an accident, that we could replicate those results, and we've continued to do so. So this validated, but it also kind of made it more formulaic. So it wasn't just like something that happened that I experienced, but also was like, okay, here's a step by step. Go read this book. Like I said, people ask me how we accomplish those things. It's like, go read this book. Like it's basically very, very synonymous with our story. So again, an oldie, but man, if you haven't read this book, I don't think it got as much publicity, maybe, even though it is a New York Times bestseller, as like a Crush It or, you know, like a Tools of Titans or, you know, one of like the big influencer, you know, type brands that published a book. I don't think it got that kind of publicity. But man, if you're looking to build a company, and it doesn't have to be, you know, you're looking to hire 1,000 people. This could be just, hey, I'm a solopreneur and I want to know like what's the best way to go to market, right? This is going to give you it's going to give you the framework to do that. And maybe some other things don't apply to you yet. They may at some point, but for now, man, I think this really applies to anything not industry specific, and I highly recommend you check it out.
Yeah, I know you stole that one off of my shelf.
Yeah.
We were fighting about this one behind the scenes. Not fighting, but I was like, this is my favorite business book of all time.
No, it's fantastic.
For sure. So I read this book a couple years ago, and it just changed everything for me. It really is like an encyclopedia of business practices and principles that are totally different than what you'll usually hear mainstream, I think. So I love the title,
totally.
Right? I love,
it defies a lot of the status quo.
100%. I love the title Rework because it really comes, that's the perfect title. Like you're just reworking the way that you think about entrepreneurship in general. And what I love about the book is it's super easy to read because you can literally go in, look at the table of contents, look for an area that you're struggling in or that you really
it's
want.
Easy to refer back to.
So easy to refer back
and
to.
they structured that way on purpose.
So I love it.
Really, it's
like a guide.
It's going to be your easiest read of the year.
Yes.
I knocked this book out in less than a week, and it was just like bam.
Yeah.
And I retained a lot of it because it was
practical.
It was very practical, but it was very short and concise. It's a
amazing book.
Yeah, it's really going to make an impact. I wouldn't recommend anybody start a business before.
Agreed.
And if you've already started a business, go back and read it now because I think you're going to find a lot of places that you're making mistakes and be like, oh my gosh, it's been this obvious the whole time right in front of my face. So don't be discouraged if you've already started, but if you haven't started yet, 100% read this book. You're going to have so much clarity on what you should be doing and how you can get your business off the ground.
And I will say this, I pull that book all the time on my members in the business lounge. They're like sick and tired of hearing it because I'm constantly pulling tips and advice from that book just because it's that practical. So if that doesn't tell you enough, please just go read it. It's amazing. All right, my last book of the year, this one is Wizard of Ads, and this is not a popular book at all. I got this from a recommendation of one of my mentors, and I love it. Oh my gosh. So I've been really into perfecting, our branding and our messaging and also our copywriting. That's been a big focus lately for me. And Wizard of Ads is this incredible book that's kind of written like an old school manuscript, but it has these really great fundamental principles of copywriting and just writing ads, right? Like that's the basis of copy. And when you go in here, they give you so many incredible examples of how to write copy that resonates with your audience, that is easy to compose, but at the same time is very impactful. So if you're kind of totally overwhelmed with the amount of copywriting that you're having to do, especially if you run an online business like we do, there's everything from creating show notes for podcasts and these video descriptions for YouTube, as well as writing blogs and newsletters and social media messages, not to mention sales and website copy. It's a lot, right? And so having a book like this that can really help you demystify copywriting and give you tons of examples so you can see exactly how the great ad and copywriters, that really just were pioneers in this space back in the, I believe it's just the 1800s probably. Seeing the same principles still apply and how you can use them in the modern world is incredibly valuable. So highly recommend picking up this book, especially if you're into copywriting right now. It's one of the books that I'm referencing in an upcoming course that we have all about copywriting in the business launch. It's called the Copy Class. Really excited about that. But yeah, if you want a preview of what's in the course or you just want to dive in deeper, please pick up this book. It's amazing.
Cool. It looks like The Legend of Zelda.
It definitely has like that old school manuscript kind of a book feel. Love it. All right, guys. So those are our top 6 books for the year, and this was really hard. Like
there's so many I've read.
Chris has a crazy collection of books, and I have a pretty decent one as well. So this was not easy at all. So definitely check these out. We're gonna leave links in the description box below, as well as in the accompanying blog. But I just wanted to say, if you're anything like me and you've struggled over the past couple of years, or you're just not in love with reading and you want to have systematic approach to really incorporating reading into your daily routine, having a group of people that you can share these ideas with, Chris is launching one of the most innovative clubs I've seen so far on the internet. I'm really excited about that. That's why I wanted to bring him on to share his love of books, but then also explain to you guys, what is this whole new thing you're launching?
Yeah, so it's called the VIP Room. And like him said, it's a digital book club for entrepreneurs. And so I guess kind of the inspiration behind it was I wasn't always a reader. True to be told, this is more of a recent thing in the past couple of years for me. And what I found was it wasn't because I didn't want to read or I didn't recognize that it was valuable. It was that I have an extremely ADD brain, right? And so if now you're probably gonna go back.
Attest to that.
Yeah, so if you go back and rewatch this video, you're gonna see I'm probably like looking all over the place and looking at the floor and like, you know, whatever, because that's just how my brain operates. It helps me so much in problem solving situations. If you yourself experience, you know, more of like the ADD tendencies, you know that it's sometimes your greatest strength, but it's also your Achilles heel at the same time. So I would find myself reading these pages of these books, and 4 pages later, and I'm like, the heck did I just, like, I didn't remember, I couldn't recite a word of what I read. And I found that was more common than I thought. Truth be told, growing companies and you know, scaling and getting to multiple 7 figures and stuff like that, it was very challenging to not have the resources that I needed that are in these books to be able to help me take my next steps. And when you're making decisions in your business, it becomes costly, right? So either it's taking longer than it should, so you're 9 months in and you're still pre-rev, which means you're not making money yet, or you're post-rev, and now you've got real expenses, real employees, real payroll, and every decision you make is going to impact not just yourself, but them, right? And that's a scary place. And so what I found was that I was like, you know what, I need to be doing this. I had read about the Mark Cubans, the Warren Buffetts, these guys, these billionaires that spend hours a day reading, which you would think, like, how do they have time to do this, right? But truth be told, they make the time for it because it's the reason they are where they are, is they invest in their learning and they invest in their reading. So I knew it was important. So it's like, what do we do and how can I share this newfound thing for me? Because it created an absolute transformation for me when I found what works for me and staying committed to that structure and then taking that information that I learned and not just putting it back on the bookshelf. Like, this book doesn't sit on my bookshelf and just collect dust. Right? Like, I take the information that I learn and that I glean from this and I immediately apply it into my business or in my life, so I make practical applications so that it becomes a part of who I am and what our business stands for, not just something I read one time that looks like a cool decoration on a bookshelf. And so that's something that took a lot of tweaking and iterating to figure out what would work for me. And so what we've done is we've created an entire community now of people that are basically, I think of it as like a group, you know, your Orange Theory, right? Your fitness club, where like, these people are busting their butts at 6 a.m. in the morning. It probably is more intriguing to lay in bed. It's nice and comfy, it's rainy and cold outside, but there's so much science behind getting up and having a gym partner or working out in groups, because it really like motivates you to want to show up every day. So when you see, and you're a part of a community like this, when you see, look, these people are keeping up with their reading, these people are staying on top of it, these people are making real changes in their life and their business, that's going to keep you accountable, right? And that's going to motivate you. And it's also going to allow you to bounce ideas off other people like, okay, well, how did you apply this from Essentialism? How did it help you? I didn't think about that. Let me try this. So it's not just such a lonely journey of like, what do I do with all this? And then if you're like me and you read 4 pages and you don't remember what it said, instead of feeling guilty about it, at the end of every month, I'm hosting a web class. So I'm basically doing a complete synopsis and overview of what the book entailed, and then presenting that to the entire community. But also giving you actionable insights and like, okay, so here's how I'm going to implement this, right? Like, pull back the curtain. Here's how I'm personally going to implement this, and here's how I think you should too.
I love it.
So it's going to be a very interactive community. It's going to be something that we're going to pick books strategically for wherever we're at in business, or whatever I feel like, you know, try to mix it up and be like, okay, this is for personal growth, personal development. This is going to be for productivity. This is going to be for revenue growth. Like, we're going to explore a lot of different avenues of business, but really make sure that we're meeting our community where they're at and holding their hand along the way and holding them accountable. And we don't want people in there that are like the hustle and grind, you know, Instagram entrepreneurs, you know, hashtag hustle, hashtag grind people. We want real entrepreneurs that are building real businesses in the world and trying to make an impact, because that's what I'm about. I'm about results. And so if you're in there, that's what we're there for, is to get you real results, because reading for me has been so transformative that I'm literally a different person than I was 3 months ago. And that's largely attributed to the books that I invest myself in.
Yeah, which is so exciting and so amazing. So if you want to learn more about the VIP room, it hasn't launched officially yet.
No.
So right now it's early bird list. If you want to get on the early bird list and be notified once Chris opens the doors, there's some really exciting bonuses that you're going to be able to access as part of that.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about this, and I just believe in this concept so much because I'm an avid reader myself. You know that we seldom bring people on here on the channel to promote anything, but I'm so excited about this totally different concept because it's something that I've seen members need so much, both in our community and, you know, in the public community that we have here on YouTube. So really excited about that. Get on the early bird list. We're going to be including some bonuses that we will not include anywhere else from the Business Lounge, from my company, for those of you who want to sign up for Chris's early bird list. And there's no strings attached, right? Like, all you do, it's free. Just sign up, and that way you'll get early access. Plus, if you sign up, then you get extra bonuses that no one else will get once he goes public with the launch.
Yeah, and we're so to this point too, it's something that I didn't mention before, but we're charging $19 a month for access to this.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I mean that's probably most people's weekly Starbucks budget.
Exactly.
In the class alone. So as an example, I coach clients that they're growing companies between 10 and $20 million. Like, they're off doing big things in the world. And they pay me a substantial amount of money. Each client will pay me about 6 figures, $5,000 to $10,000 a month. And so largely what we're doing is I'm giving them reading curriculum, and we're going over that. So you're effectively getting the same curriculum or similar curriculum that I provide to some of these high-level executives of these like growing startups, emerging startups, later stage startups. You're getting that for $19 a month.
Like, it's ridiculous.
It is absurd. That's not going to be for everything. That's just part of the early bird, because as we grow the community, that's going to be open to the first few hundred people. But after that, that price is going to go up substantially. But I didn't talk about price, so I want to make sure that we went ahead and included that.
Yeah, plus you're not going to be offering the bonuses after the early bird period ends, which will be in a week. So if you want to jump in, this is the right time to do it.
Yep.
All right, guys, so excited to have Chris. Thank you so much for being here with us today, sharing your tab books. I hope that this inspired you to get your read on and really invest on learning from people who have literally done the work, who've made all the mistakes, who've learned from those mistakes, and have put decades worth of knowledge into their books. So highly encourage you to pick a book up today if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already, and make sure to leave us in the comment section below, what is your all-time favorite entrepreneurship or marketing book? We'd love to hear your suggestions, especially because you didn't talk about this, but you guys are going to be reading, the first book that you're going to be reading is Rework.
Yeah, well, so Essentialism is the first class we're doing on October 31st. Which
is coming up next
week.
If
you sign up before that, you'll have access, and you don't have to read the book, because you can literally just, you can go back and read it if you want to, but I'm going to be doing this one as the first web class, and then November's book is Rework.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
Yeah, so it aligns perfectly.
Yeah, awesome. So leave us your comments below. We'd love to hear from you, and then I'll catch you. I said we.
I'll be back.
I'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching. Love you tons. Bye for now.
See you guys.